Yeah. TalkShoe is not recording as usual. Why? Tab, Shift, anything. To record, so we'll just pull it from the MP3. Okay, people, here we go.
TalkShoe. Recorded live.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation or around the world. Once again, you are listening to the VMware Communities Roundtable podcast. This is podcast number 543. My name is Eric Nilsson, and with me today I have my co-host Matt Lungat. Matt, how you doing today?
Eric, I am well. Another snowy and soon to even be more snow day here in central Pennsylvania. We're expecting 6 inches, another round overnight tonight. But I'm with power, which is better than I can say for our friends in the community down in Texas. But how are you, sir? How are things out in the West Coast? And what's the color of the bay today?
I'm having weather guilt here, I think, because it's been really nice. It's sunny today. A little bit on the cooler side, of balmy 50 degrees. So I really can't complain because we don't have 12 inches of snow outside, and we certainly have power. And the color of the bay is just a nice blue-green because it's been sunny and mild today. We had some rain over the weekend, so it hasn't been perfect, but it has been a nice day today. So feel a little bit of weather guilt, survivor guilt here, as we're in California, being happy without that. On the show today, we're going to be covering Horizon SaaS services. What's new with Sachin Sharma? I'm going to see. I already blew it. Sachin's here. Sharma. There we go.
You got it.
Sachin, welcome to the show. We always do a little bit of the, hey, who are you? What do you do here? Why don't we do that first? Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll do a little bit of the news, and then get into Horizon SaaS services.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Eric and Matt. So my name is Sachin Sharma. I'm part of End User Computing Business Unit focused on product marketing. I've been here at VMware for a little bit over 8 years. I came in through a small acquisition, and it's been wonderful to be here working with a lot of great people like yourself. So thanks for having me on the show.
And where are you located in the great planet of Earth?
I live in San Francisco, but currently I'm in Southern California right now as my wife's grew up in Southern California. So, I hear about all the weather, problems that are going around and hope everyone is safe, but can't complain here. Definitely just nothing but sun.
Nice. Yep. Everybody gets to work everywhere. I think somebody on our team is actually working down in the Bahamas, right? She walks out on the beach every day, but she's in our tech meetings, so I guess you can be anywhere, experiencing any weather you want. If you really want to get out right now, you still got some time to do that. Matt, let's talk about the news. vExperts. Why don't you tell us what's going on with vExperts?
So vExpert announcements for the first half of 2021 were announced last week. We had a total of now 2,100 vExperts across at least 40 countries. So those announcements went out. Congratulations to all the vExperts out there that renewed that designation, and for the new members of that community. I see in the blog post that went out that's out there for the announcement itself, that the sub-programs, 9 sub-programs, will be announced here by the BUs relatively soon, within the next couple of weeks or so. So be on the lookout for those sub-programs, things like, I believe, so the EUC we've seen before, and cloud services and whatnot. So if that's of your inclination to have that, again, a special sub-designation from within the vExpert program, be on the lookout for those announcements that will be coming your way, I'm sure, with the blog posts and emails.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, shout out to everybody. And what I would say is I've been watching Corey Romero. We're on the vExpert email alias, and I think we've gotten maybe at least 100 escalations where people didn't get in, and we're escalating to see if we could review their apps and maybe look at why they didn't get in and maybe help them out. So if you did get in, just saying, there were a lot of people that didn't get in because we look at what you do, and 2020 was a hard year, and so there were a lot of people that didn't make the cut. But if you made the cut, congratulations to all of you, and we are looking at great ways to engage you this year. And thank you for doing all the hard work and being kind of the core backbone of the V community ecosystem that's out there. So thanks to everybody again. Great year, a lot of new people, congratulating some new people. And then there are people that have been V experts for 11 or 12 years running their blogs and engaging. So thanks a lot to everybody for doing that. Yep, good year. Also coming up, just a shout out, I know there is a networking event, an all-day networking event that we called out on our last podcast, 542, I believe. Or maybe 541 on the networking podcast that we had. Go listen to that. There is a registration that you can go sign up for a networking event all day in, I think it is mid to late March or sometime in March. So go check.
I believe it's March 23rd. March 23rd.
What's the name of the network?
FutureNet.
And that's an all-day conference, kind of all day. There's going to be speakers. I think VMware only has 2 speakers on it. So the rest of the speakers are just industry speakers talking about networking topics. So FutureNet, there's lots of going on in, edge networking versus, connecting to the hyperscalers, as well as just running your own network in your data center. So a lot of cool stuff going to be covered there. Go register. It's free. Another day of Zoom meetings. How can you go wrong with that? I think that I did a leadership conference for the last 2 days, Matt, and spent half days in more leadership conference stuff. And people ask me are you getting tired of Zoom? And I'm like, yeah, I think so. Getting tired of Zoom. So
I still can't find my mute button on any given day. So you're probably doing better than I am.
I'll tell you what, board of directors, one of our main board of directors is in there, and he's talking away and his mouth is wiggling and we're not hearing any sound. Right? He's like, well, if I had a nickel for every time I, didn't have the mute button properly checked. So even some of the big guys can get that. Interestingly enough, Michael Dell came and talked for maybe 15 minutes. And I obviously can't talk much about what he said, but I was fairly inspired by some of the things he said. One thing I don't think is confidential that I can say is that our Zane Rowe is our current acting CEO for VMware right now. And Zane said he texts Michael Dell 3 or 4 times a day, right? So Michael Dell is very engaged with Zane being the active CEO, as Pat now has is now just on our board, right? So he's not active day to day managing the company any longer. He's obviously went to Intel to be the president CEO there, but Pat Kelsinger is on our board. So that's not like he's completely gone. He's still in the mix for strategy. But Michael Dell does apparently work with Zane multiple times a day. So that's interesting just to know that Mike's actually paying attention to VMware, likes VMware, and had good things to say about VMware in general. So it's fun to see him this morning. And let's see, I think that's good enough between vExperts, and then a shout out to VMworld. VMworld will be, happening this year. I think it's October 4th or 5th, something like that. Look online, go register. I don't know if they have Reg open yet. I think they just have save the date. So, but know that it's coming up. And if you're thinking about doing a paper, get your paper ideas ready, because call for papers will come out shortly. All right. So with that,
October 5th through 7th.
October 5th through 7th, right? Perfect. And with that, we'll get to our main topic today. It's good to have you on, Sachin. I think that's how you said it. So we'll try to get it right a few times today. We've started with how long you've been at VMware, which is actually pretty cool. You've been here, what did you say, 5 or 6 years? So long enough to be an old timer now, right? So there. Why don't you give us an update on Horizon, and topic is SaaS services. We're going to talk about what's new. Why don't you just give us the couple minute overview of, having it being on a cloud service to begin with, right? I mean, I think everybody understands how to automate desktops and, use a Horizon on-prem, but why don't you take us through the journey going to the cloud and what that means?
Absolutely. I think, I've been inside of end user computing now for 8 years. And for the majority of the time, we have been selling VDI solutions, published application solutions a few years ago. And that's a part of our entire digital workspace strategy with our Workspace ONE platform that combines the mobility piece, the secure access piece, the employee experience piece, plus your virtual desktops and applications all into one platform. And I think across that entire journey, what we're starting to see even more of over the last couple of years is really customers saying, okay, I've had on-premises VDI or on-premises applications that I'm hosting to serve up for my employees. And last year was, obviously the happenings in 2020, it brought to light what good technology can actually do for you in terms of VDI and published applications. We never had this much interest in VDI and published applications, at least as long as I've been here, because I think a lot of customers realized, how can I quickly give my employees who are all of a sudden remote access to corporate resources? I mean, you can do that through VPN, for example, and VDI happened to be one of those technologies that you could also do it with. When you combine that with all of the as a service technologies out there, infrastructure as a service, desktop as a service, SaaS, it really starts to open up a lot of new doors, new use cases, and just quite fundamentally our customers' eyes around what they can do when you combine those technologies with virtual desktops and applications. So we kind of put all of that together, all the chess pieces really kind of came across and gave us a really nice solution, a really nice story, and just at the end of the day, allowed our customers to benefit from VDI in the cloud. And it doesn't necessarily mean your workloads have to be in the cloud. It's just that they can use these SaaS types of environments for Horizons specifically. I can definitely drill down into details because it can get a little confusing pretty quickly, but it was a great moment actually, just even in 2020, even with everything going on, and how we were able to help our customers with the quick scale to corporate resources based off of infrastructure as a service in the cloud, even on premises with virtual desktops and apps.
Yeah, one of the questions, and Matt, I'll let you jump in here in a minute, but one of the questions that I think somebody asked Michael Dell, or somebody asked the board of directors in our session this morning, as in the leadership group, was the definition of a SaaS service versus a subscription service, right? And what does that really mean? And are we talking true SaaS, or are we talking subscription where you're just buying and running, or are we running this stuff on a cloud? And if so, whose cloud?
Absolutely. That's one of the main questions I get day in, day out. I mean, when it comes to subscription, that's really more of a vehicle to purchase. You're purchasing something via subscription. And, if you've been around for a while, you'll notice like magazines, for example, you get through subscription. Netflix, you get through subscription, some sort of monthly, annual, some sort of term, right? A defined term. And you can compare that to perpetual licensing that we've had traditionally with software, where it's a one-time buy. And if you want support and services, you might pay. For us in our world, we call it SNS for that right to update. But essentially, you have the right in perpetuity to have access and entitlement to your license. And subscription, it's a little bit different because it's based off of terms. That is just the vehicle to purchase. Now, the actual delivery model of software is where SaaS comes into play. Traditionally, we've had on-premise.
You are joining the online studio.
Sorry about that.
You are unmuted and can speak to the host.
Try to get TalkShoe back in at the same time. Yep.
No problem. Yeah, I mean, traditionally you've had virtual desktops and apps where an IT administrator, multiple admins would have to download the software bits from my.vmware.com portal, install it on some sort of hardware that they have. And it can take a pretty lengthy process. Then plus you have to maintain all of that hardware and software in the back end, right? And that's all on your terms as an organization. With cloud now, what we're seeing is how can we offer some of that functionality, or if not all of it, in the cloud? And so what we mean by Horizon SaaS, really the first step is getting that management layer in the cloud. So we have a control plane, we call it the Horizon control plane, and there's management services on there like global brokering, image management, managing applications more efficiently, managing users more efficiently, all their profiles, monitoring. Instead of having to stand up that infrastructure on premises that customers have been used to, try to really show the way of how customers can potentially reduce costs and simplify management if they took that management layer and stuck it in the cloud. That's what we really imply by Horizon SaaS. And then from there, it's a really multiple step journey according to the customer's needs. There's no requirement to redeploy your on-premises workloads, but if you wanted to redeploy those or stand up new ones in the cloud instead of having to procure hardware locally, that could be a big win on your part, to where it's opening up use cases like HADR, like burst, cloud burst, quickly scaling up and down these new virtual desktops and apps without, again, having to procure hardware. So it's kind of a multi-step journey. We try to make it as clear as possible because, again, it can get confusing, especially, when I think of SaaS, I think immediately of like a Salesforce.com, one of the first companies I knew about SaaS. But with the journey that we're doing with the VDI and apps, it's a little bit different because we have a lot of customers that are already on premises, and they're really trying to figure out what's the best way for me to move forward so I can unlock these new use cases, so I can use this cloud management plane that's available for me.
Yeah.
So Sachin, I wanted to step into that. Let's say in a traditional sense. So I have a, let's say 500 desktop traditional on-premise deployment, and it's split up between two locations. I have a primary and a secondary site, or a primary and a failover site. How would I start to step in as the traditional Horizon administrator and look into some of those cloud control plane options? One of the first things that I see from an administrator benefit would be that global services load balancer replacement that's right out there, and then the image management. So can we dive into that a little bit of what would be those advantages and how you would step from that existing on-premises deployment to take advantage of some of these cloud control plane features?
Absolutely. So to the first question, I think it's, if we take a look at the before and after, like what do you have before the control plane services that live in the cloud versus after? So before, you'd have to set up your own global service load balancer, your GSLBs. Those have to be set up for you if you have multiple locations and multiple sites and you want to still provide a great user experience by just giving a single URL. If you want to manage images, you'd have to have some sort of PC lifecycle management tool that probably isn't really built for virtualization. It's more for the physical PC management, but it can make ends meet and it can make do for what you need to do, but it still gets a little bit difficult because a lot of times scripting and whatnot is involved. And those are just two examples. If you can flip those on their head and put them in the cloud, now those services, customers as an IT administrator, you don't have to worry about updating those services or updating the backend infrastructure to maintain those services. And then B, you can start to get rid of a lot of your existing investments or leverage those somewhere else, like your GSLBs, for example, those load balancers. There's no more requirement for those anymore when you have our universal brokering system in the control plane. That PCLM lifecycle management tool that you're using, you don't need to use it anymore. You can use our image management service that's continuously being updated and iterated on. That's the beauty of having it in the cloud. So hopefully that kind of gives you a sense of the before and the after and why we think it's more ideal for customers to go down that route. Now, we're not forcing our customers to go down that route by any means. We want to educate them and give them options. So it's up to them to decide, hey, do I want to use this control plane? And maybe even as a second step, I can start thinking about workloads that I can move on into the cloud.
Yeah, that makes sense. One of the things that they talked about was, whether you're expensing it or whether it's a capital expense or it can just be an expense, right? And so that's one of the other elements is that capital investment's lower, amortization doesn't exist because you could just take your management plane and expense it, right? And as we all know, these SaaS services that applies here, we're picking a piece and then just turning it into expense versus capital infrastructure to run your management plane. There's some advantages there, and there's the advantages of just time and what do you consider key skill sets that you want to spend time doing on-prem versus not being on-prem, right? And then there's the whole COVID interaction of being on-prem gets tricky anyway. So the less you can deal with being on-prem and letting cloud services be on-prem to do that work also, that also makes sense. So how, and Matt, you can jump in if you have another question, but how's that going? Do you see customers adopting it? I know that they had us grade, how do we think we're doing as we're offering up SaaS services? And, the sales teams that we're talking seem to think we were doing really well, right? Like versus me as a corporate management community guy, right? I'm like, oh geez, all I talk to is the experts all day. We're all on-prem. I don't think anybody uses this cloud stuff. It's silly, right? But
Yeah.
the reality is the sales team thinks that they're doing really well with this hybrid model approach. How are we doing?
Yeah, great question. And it's one that we get feedback from our customers all the time. Hey, why are you pushing cloud on me? I don't want it. I'm used to my on-premises world, and I just kind of want to keep it that way. And I think our biggest task at hand is to give customers options. We don't want to, any customer to be forced into anything. It's completely up to them. We want to keep all customers happy. But B, it's more to educate on why cloud might make sense for you, why it can potentially benefit from reduced costs due to managing fewer images or being able to run app stacks within your virtualized application or virtualized desktop environment compared to how you're doing it in the before era. So to us, it's about customer choice, and it's about educating, and it's getting down to inevitably the financials are going to come up. And that's why we have, pretty compelling pricing to get our customers upgraded. We have programs in place, and it'll make it very favorable for these customers to determine, hey, do I want to go down the SaaS route? Do I want to put more workloads in VMware Cloud on AWS or in Google Cloud or Horizon Cloud on Azure VMware Solution? I mean, there's so many flexible deployment options that are available that get unlocked once you get into this subscription model. And I think over time, I mean, we have our CTABs, our Customer Technical Advisory Boards, twice a year. And we've been talking about the move to subscription now for a while. We've been talking about cloud and SaaS for a while, and inevitably we get the same, oh, not again. But in the last year or so, that's when customers, I think, have started to realize, wait a second, that HA setup that I was going to set up, or that DR setup, all of a sudden I actually do have to set it up. And this is where I can benefit from the capacity on Azure or the capacity on VMware Cloud on AWS.
So if I had a traditional, going back to the example that we had brought up before, Sachin, where I have named users, and to speak to your blog post out there that was available on blogs.vmware.com under the EUC computing blog that's entitled all these new Horizon SaaS offerings, it seems like there's now multiple SaaS subscription options, which is great to see. But then there's the universal subscription, and then the standard subscription, and then also that there's this Horizon app standard subscription. So if I'm looking to blend now that traditional named user, and I'm starting to dip into all of these, like, well, I'm thinking, well, okay, universal, where can I use universal, or can I get away with just using a standard subscription? Can you walk us through a little bit of those differences and of what those new SaaS subscriptions models are and how they might be applicable?
Absolutely. So we've had our universal SaaS offerings now for a couple of years. They've been available, and many customers have taken advantage of them. And I think we started to realize, okay, if the SaaS stuff is really going to become advantageous for customers, we're going to get them from all angles. It's not going to be just customers that are looking just for VDI or just for Horizon apps. It could be a blend of both. It could be just one or the other. And they're coming from different sources, meaning somebody may have purchased a low-end version of Horizon that only offered apps previously, or only offered virtual desktops. So we wanted to have paths for them all the way across, not to make a big jump over all the way into Horizon Universal. I think for customers that enjoy the flexibility of being able to run on any of these types of deployments on premises all the way out to hybrid and multi-cloud options, and they see the value in these use cases, that's when they should absolutely gravitate towards our Horizon Universal subscription. But those that may not want the apps world, for example, they just want virtual desktops, that's where they would trend more towards Horizon standard subscription. And then those that only want apps and don't want virtual desktops, that's where they would go for Horizon apps, either universal or Horizon apps standard subscription. So different subscription options. Again, we're trying to we're trying to simplify as much as we can, but also it's a fine line that you have to balance with making sure that the many customers that we have, that they all have a path to move forward to, again, if they want to move down that path.
Sure. So the universal license would be the equivalent of what used to be the enterprise version, so to say. So it's some of those features, and then allowing that mobility between on-premises and cloud offerings. And then the standard subscription license, and then both the app standard subscription license would be for, let's call it, one infrastructure only.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So for the universal, think of that as the most premium edition that we have. It's to giving you flexibility to run on premises, in the cloud, multi locations. You can get access to all of the use cases that we've discussed. You don't have to redeploy if you're on premises. You can move to the cloud if and when you want to, but it'll absolutely give you the most flexibility. Plus, you get access to all of those control plane services like app management and image management. As you kind of go down into the more standard versions of this, such as Horizon Standard subscription, that's where you'll have a little bit of a limited feature set. You won't get access to apps, for example. You'll only be allowed to run from one location. That's also because the majority of our Horizon Standard customers are there as well. So I think you put it very eloquently, like Horizon Enterprise, you can think of that as mapped to Horizon Universal. Horizon Standard, you can think of that as mapped to Horizon Standard subscription.
Nice. Okay. So we talked to the title of I think this podcast is What's New, right? So we've done the summary of what it is, why people use it, and some expectations are on adoption. How often are you guys doing releases? I know the SaaS world, it's pretty fast, right? Like you're always doing releases. And then we got you on here because we want to hear what's new. What is new? What do you think is something new that's worthwhile talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So the beauty of SaaS from and not only an IT standpoint, but also from the folks that are developing it, our engineers, our R&D staff, is that the iteration process is just so fast. We don't want it to get fast to the point where anything is sloppy or anything like that, but more so, on a monthly basis, we can put out releases so that, if image management service, for example, needs to run all of a sudden on a brand new cloud, we can push that out. And that's truly where we're focusing a lot of our efforts, is continuing to put more hybrid cloud services in the management plane, specifically around Universal Broker. We just went GA with that a little while back, towards the end of last year, to work on premises and to work in some of our clouds. And I think over time, we're just going to keep continuing to iterate on that. And it's interesting because while we'd love to kind of paint a broad stroke and get all of the clouds covered, we know that there's priorities that we have to take. The majority of our customers are still on premises as they're evaluating what they can do in the cloud. And then you think about, hey, what are the top IaaS vendors out there? You got Microsoft, you got AWS, you got Google Cloud, maybe a couple of others, but those are the top ones. And so we have to think about, from a product standpoint, which ones do we kind of prioritize? And I think over the course of the year, you'll see just more and more of these releases where more of these control plane features are available across our deployment options. And that's ultimately just to help our customers, even if you don't go multi-cloud, which I don't quite frankly expect the majority of our customers really to have a multi-cloud strategy for VDI and apps, at least within the next 6 months. But as they look towards the future, even if they wanted to just for a single location, they could still take advantage of all of that.
Right. Another comment / question I have is, in the briefing this morning, I think, or yesterday, we had a customer come in and was talking about EUC and Horizon, and the fact that they had trouble justifying it, right? Like they had tried to go to their board saying, hey, we want to move a lot of this into VMware's cloud services model. Everybody was hesitant. Do they really want to do this? Then COVID happened, and they had moved some percentage of their org as kind of a trial to this cloud environment, right? And Horizon Cloud, and then the rest weren't. And the people that were in cloud running their desktops through this model didn't miss a day of work. Like they were online the next day, right? Where the other people that hadn't moved to that, like it took like 4 or 5 days. And the board of directors was like, wow, this is like compelling, right? In the sense that, you can they had an issue with COVID. They had, office shut down, desktops weren't where they needed needed to be, and the cloud people just didn't miss a beat, right? So that was one thing. Then they also looked at that number of calls into the call center for problems, and when they did move to Horizon, for whatever reason, they didn't get into why the calls were dramatically declining. Maybe their implementation wasn't very good on-prem. I don't know why that was, but they also saw savings there, right? So all of a sudden it became clear that there were these example use cases of customers where they weren't sure they wanted to go into cloud services and managing, their desktop infrastructure. And when they got there because of COVID, they were like, wow, this saved us a lot more money than we expected. So
it goes to show you, I mean, what you're highlighting right now are just the core fundamental benefits of even virtualization to begin with, and especially in the VDI and published app space. It's trying to get down to an operational model for IT so it's easier for them to manage the desktops, the images, and the apps that are associated with it. With physical PC management, it can be a little bit more difficult, especially if you have a distributed type of environment and low latent or high latency, low bandwidth types of environments. That's a perfect use case to look at VDI and published applications. So I'm glad to hear stories like that. I mean, there's a ton that we heard over the course of 2020 where VDI was a tool in the organization's toolbox, and it happened to be one that kind of saved the day for a lot of these organizations. And the beauty of it is now when you combine it with cloud, you can just scale up and down. You don't necessarily have to have 40,000 virtual desktops on all the time. You can have 10,000 on according to shift work. And if there's temporary seasonal workers that come on board, hey, that's another great use case of get all these retail workers up online for these 3 months and then bring those virtual desktops and apps down.
Just wonder, and Matt, I'll let you go if you need to, but I'm just wondering, everybody now, we're all, I have friends who have now gotten the vaccine. We're starting to slowly come out of COVID, right? Then you hear, I think Michael Dell came in and said, we don't actually see this going back, right? We don't see us going back to the way we used to work, right? Sitting in 45-minute traffic jams in order to get into the VMware campus. If you ever came up to 280 from San Francisco to get into the campus in the morning, you wait in a 30-minute line just to get through the exit, right? And certainly we're all struggling with what does it mean to be at home, right? Like some of us have started building out our own little offices, with backgrounds and things. But I don't think it's going to go back to the way it was, right? And this includes cloud. So there was a major push to get everybody into this cloud service management model, right? What are you guys seeing from your planning perspective, right, with regard to product? Do you see this accelerating, and do you think it's the pendulum gonna shift back as everybody can travel and get on airplanes and do different things? There's a bit of me that goes, I want to leave this house and never come back, right? But at the same time, I start considering traffic and what's going to happen. What are you guys thinking from the product team perspective around, is this just going to be faster to the future kind of stuff, or do we see a pullback at some point?
I don't think it's going to pull back anytime soon. I think we will stay in sort of a hybrid work type of model for the majority of the employers out there. I can't speak for everyone, but I know a lot of organizations are just going full remote, and that's a great way to attract talent as well. That talent is going to need access to corporate resources, and one vehicle to do that with is virtual desktops and apps. So I think it's going to be a slow roll to get back to normal times where people might be using more of their local resources rather than centralized resources that you would with VDI and DaaS. And we're doubling down on our efforts. It's the way that we prioritize engineering efforts is very much so based off of just customer demand. And we joke, you may have heard the term, the year of VDI. Over the last decade, every year was supposed to be the year of VDI, and it just so happened, under the circumstances of 2020, it actually was the year of VDI. We've never seen an explosion of customers actually using the technology like they have in 2020, and I don't quite frankly see that slowing down. But again, it's up to our customers. We want to ensure that they have the tools that they need to keep their employees productive. I think Horizon overall, while we very much so focused on Horizon SaaS and the transition over to subscription, it's, if you zoom out, it's a lot bigger than that. I mean, you have to think about security. I mean, security is a use case for Horizon, but what about securing mobile devices? What about securing laptops? You have to think about the management layer of those physical PCs and mobile devices. You have to think about the employee experience, onboarding. I mean, you can imagine if somebody starts at VMware or another company while going through the pandemic and full remote, it's probably not the easiest onboarding experience, especially if you're not getting any FaceTime and you're used to getting FaceTime. If you bunch all of that together with security, employee experience management, VDI, and apps, I think that is our ultimate North Star of what we have with Workspace ONE. And I'm not here to pitch Workspace ONE by any means, but I just want people to think about, hey, let's zoom out. VDI is one tool as a part of the toolkit. What about that entire, digital workspace, that entire workspace to be able to work from anywhere we want? I don't think I can speak for most people at VMware. I don't think we missed a beat as employees because we were given a lot of these tools already to begin with. A lot of us did work from home, in a hybrid model or fully remote, and it benefited us. And we hope that we can provide the same type of output for our customers.
Sachin, how much did you see that VDI adoption, right? So we have this need for some type of either virtual desktop or a remote app that then now that puts into the CIO or the executive's head, where now we have to be concerned about what device we're delivering that desktop to. So how much did that start to now, or have you seen from licensing where we might have had VDI there, but it was delivered to a corporate device or a thin client? Now it's being delivered to a user's or a personal laptop, a personal desktop, and an iPad or whatnot. And now it's more of that mentality of, well, what are we doing for that endpoint management? And how much is this now driving, or have you seen where the use of VDI is now driving even further UEM solutions? Is that really a case? Have you seen that from the licensing where it goes hand in hand, or is there a corollary there?
It is a absolutely use case. And I think, since our AirWatch acquisition about 7 or 8 years ago, it's been something that we've been building together even more. VDI, you can think of a lot of people kind of bucket into a silo, and UEM, Unified Endpoint Management, you bucket into a silo, but we're trying to bring those together even more, again, zooming out into that complete workspace platform with Workspace ONE. We're seeing that you have to, from a security angle specifically, you have to think about as a customer, what are my potential points of attack? And with VDI, security is a use case for VDI. You could potentially be more secure because your corporate resources are all living behind the firewall or living in the cloud where you're not managing them. But at the same time, the device that you're accessing those corporate resources from need to be managed and secured as well. And that's where a UEM solution like Workspace ONE UEM can help out. No matter if you're on your laptop, your MacBook, your iPhone, your Android phone, your thin client, your zero client, that's where we have these tools available with UEM as a part of Workspace ONE overall to really help out in those different models. And I think you'll see a lot more of this kind of coming out as we broaden the scope, especially now with other tools as part of our toolkit like Carbon Black, Velo Cloud, and Avi Networks, kind of bringing all of these together. I think we have some really unique pieces to help our customers out.
Yeah, it is an interesting concept. I'll jump in just because I have a security one there. A little bit of storyline here. Another company that I have friends that work at he's telling me a story, on Zoom because we're not allowed to actually meet anybody for a beer anymore. But he was telling us that somewhere in China, not picking on China or anything, but they targeted their company, right? Hacked in. And we're in the midst of hacking their install servers for all their devices to be able to brick all the devices, right? And they literally have millions and millions of devices that they sell, and they were coming in trying to put code in the distribution app to be able to then, once it's distributed, brick it, right, encrypt the whole thing and brick it, and then extort like $20 million out of them in order to unbrick all the devices that they've bricked. And so when you're talking about managing these end user desktops and, and that's, the network, the security is not just it's just not nice to have anymore. Like, oh, they might break in and, change our website or anything. This is like extortion, and if you have a lot of volume, they'll literally grab a couple minutes. You'll pay them because you're like, look, we just want to get going again tomorrow. So here, we'll write a check for $3 million and go away, right? It's like a serious thing now that you just can't play with your infrastructure anymore and hope it goes well, right?
I completely agree. And the interesting balance there is what do you do not only on the security side to keep things secure, but then not have it compromise employee experience, because we could put up layers and layers and layers of security. And then me as an employee, it's like, oh, this antivirus, it's slowing down my PC. I'm not going to be able to create that PowerPoint deck that I wanted to create. I think
the buddy was telling me he's going to have to cut off a middle toe, right? And send it to them so that they can verify. So you could just log in. Looks like I think they're at like 3 or 4 level authentication now, just because it is such a serious threat that there is that ease of use that pretty soon I'm going to just do it with pencil and paper and I'll post it to you or something, because if it gets so hard to use, it's like now they've been affected in locking you out from a business perspective. So yeah, it's security and ease of use. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
so in some ways that BYOD device is harder, right, than the corporate. The corporate device, it was easy. You had a SCCM task sequence where it was bulletproof. You have your corporate firewalls and antivirus and whatnot, and it was a boilerplate image. Now we're in this BYOD mentality where it can be an iPad, an Android phone, a personal desktop, and whatnot. It's trying to manage that experience and still set those high security standards. And to make that balancing act between the two with some type of UEM solution is difficult. I think Workspace ONE does it great, but it's definitely a challenge, maybe even more so than what we've seen before.
I wholeheartedly agree. It's that's our mission. What can we do to provide that digital workspace, to provide the best employee experience, not compromise security as a part of it, and again, just give tools to our customers so that they can continue on with their daily tasks, so they can meet their objectives and their mission.
Sachin, you brought up tools, and I want to go into let's call it a potential point of contention that I've heard back from some feedback from some customers, and that is the VROPS for Horizon Management Pack. And where that's at on the future roadmap, and some changes there that's brought about, and why that might be going away, and what's coming out, and what the mentality there was to pull that back and to look at new operating models for on-premise and cloud deployments.
Yeah, absolutely. I think monitoring is an important piece of any environment. I've been an IT administrator in past lives, and all I did was use my dashboards and my reports to go in and monitor and make sure that everything was running smoothly. If I'm getting a call from one of the employees saying, hey, my laptop's running slow, well, I can go in and diagnose it based off of the monitoring solutions that I have. So vRealize Operations for Horizon did a fantastic job, still continues to do a fantastic job of doing the monitoring piece. I think what we saw was that vRealize Operations for Horizon specifically, it was an agent-based solution that was built for virtualization inside of VDI and published apps, and that ended up giving us a little bit of performance hits. And what we ended up doing was actually calling out that it's going to be end of support by, I believe it's going to be September of 2022, so end of next year. And so we did take that out of our most premium packaging. But in lieu of that, I mean, customers still receive VROPS for Horizon through a variety of different other ways. There's through the VROPS suite that it was available. So not too much kind of pushback on there. I think as we move towards the future, we saw some opportunities for monitoring solutions up and down the Horizon stack, if you will. So for example, we have our cloud monitoring solution that's built, it's called CMS, as a part of our control plane. So that'll give you some insights into in-guest metrics and troubleshooting and whatnot. We have a partnership with one of our partners named ControlUp, who also does a great job at that in-guest metrics, troubleshooting, root cause analysis for those desktops, virtual desktops, and published applications. And then kind of the lower half of that stack is really the infrastructure monitoring. And that's where our cloud management business unit colleagues have come out with this new management pack for Horizon. It's called MP4H. And so, we're looking at creative ways on what we can do to get that out to our customers. That is available today, so customers can go down that route if they wanted to monitor that bottom half of the stack. And I think you'll see a lot more clarity over the upcoming year or so on how we're going to package it all together so that our customers can take advantage of it. So, going back, V4H, we did announce that it was going to be end of support by the end of next year in favor of this more agentless, more elegant solution with management pack for Horizon.
It's really about what workloads now. It's not just that on-prem domain, right? It's where was or what was there for monitoring on-premises workload domains. Great tool, but now we have to look at what are the SaaS offerings and what are out there, and how is that monitoring tool going to adapt to those workloads? And it sounds like it's complex enough that we need to look at multiple offerings depending on what it is that you want to monitor and where that workload lies.
That's exactly it. It's choice. Some customers may want to go very deep into the in-guest metrics, and that's where they can absolutely look at a solution like ControlUp. Other customers may just want to monitor just the bottom half, just the Horizon infrastructure, the SDDC layer, for example. And then, even as you go out to other clouds like Azure and VMC on AWS, there's other monitoring solutions, sometimes that even come packaged in, and those could be good enough. And if they're not good enough, we have choice and options available on our end as well.
Eric, over to you.
All right, I got one, which is, Pat Gelsinger. I like always to come to Pat Gelsinger. I got Pat Gelsinger on my mind here. Like, he was bad mouthing or making fun of Apple a little bit with their ARM chip selection, right? So, as desktops change and ARM shows up in Apple clients now, right? Like, where are we going with that?
I don't have a whole lot of expertise on the chip side of it, as far as Apple and Intel and all the players in there. I don't think it makes a difference on the virtual desktop side. I mean, we partner with a lot of the marquee vendors out there. Again, it's customer choice on where they want to run their hardware, and if they want to relinquish that management and put it in the cloud, and that's perfectly fine too. So unfortunately, not a whole lot of feedback that I can provide on
right.
that area.
You have to have a player, right? You are. Yeah, I'm sure you'll do an ARM version of what displays.
Yeah, well, that's actually a good point. I mean, we do partner with Intel, with AMD, with NVIDIA to make sure that the experience for the end user who is accessing their virtual desktop or virtual app remotely is a great experience. And we've been partnering with these partners for years and years, to the point where we're in lockstep of building out roadmaps together. We're continuing to iterate on our BLAST protocol, other protocols that we can use as a part of providing that enhanced user experience.
Right. I would just assume that when Apple comes up with an ARM client, right, that we'll have something that will display the rendering on that.
I'm sure we will. Yeah, absolutely.
That's a boring answer, right? It's more exciting to pick on Apple a little bit, or support Pat with x86, right? But I can imagine that's the way it is.
Well, to the Pat question, so Sasha, you've probably been with that BU long enough that Sanjay would have been VP when you started, right?
So I was here a little bit before Sanjay arrived. And at that time, I mean, end user computing was all it was VDI. So one of the big moments that after Sanjay arrived was the AirWatch acquisition. It completely accelerated our path for end user computing, and it made us very relevant inside of inside and outside of VMware. I think people took a lot of notice. But yeah, to answer your question, a little bit before Sanjay had arrived.
Okay, and not putting you on the spots, but any thoughts, comments on potential new CEOs, or just general observations that you've seen thus far with Pat's departure?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I keep up with who the potentials could be. I'm just not up that high in the food chain to to really know who it's going to be. It'd be great if it was an internal candidate. I think we have several of them. It'd be great if it was an external candidate. I think we have several of them as well. So
I think we're all guessing at this point, but no matter who will be picked, it will be a great selection.
absolutely. It's hard to, I think, follow in Pat's footsteps. He's tremendous CEO. I remember his first VMworld when he went on stage all the way up until every sales kickoff we did. And I mean, the passion, the energy that he brings to the table every single day, how intelligent he is was second to none. So it's a tough loss for us for sure, but I think we have either a good bench internally, or I'm sure externally there's going to be some great candidates.
All right, that sums up the Pat Gelsinger thing. I know a lot more because I've been interviewing for the job, and so I can't really tell you guys about it yet. They have me under NDA. I think that I'm not sure I got anything else here. I'm trying to think. There was a question I had, but now it's like gone. Right? Like I don't know if I have any other questions other than the standard ones that you always do, Matt, which is
Well, this is EUC. I could go on for hours, so I will throw this out there for Sasha. What's on the roadmap? What can we talk about in broad brushstrokes for 2021 for all things EUC? What's out there? What can we be looking forward to without getting into obviously too much detail in all things NDA, but just for broad brushstrokes, what's coming along? What are you excited about, Sachin?
What I'm excited about is absolutely the conjunction between security and that employee experience. I think we've touched upon that many times here, but it's very fascinating to me because just the onboarding experience, even if, let's say, you leave the company, like what is that experience like? We've all been through the situation where you've had to call up IT, and generally speaking, it's not the best experience. I think it's getting better, and I can say that not only at VMware IT or my previous company's IT. I think there could be more steps taken to make that experience a lot better. And I think our employee experience functionality that we're adding more and more into our Workspace ONE platform could absolutely help. And then at the same time, I mentioned all these pieces, Carbon Black, VeloCloud, Vdi Networks, really combining that with these other pieces that we've already had as a part of our tool bag in Horizon and Workspace ONE. I think you'll see a lot of goodness kind of coming out of there because not a lot of folks out there have those types of pieces that they can play with. And so to me, that's what is exciting from a VMware standpoint, just having the very unique angle, especially through virtualization and having that virtualization layer and impact onto cloud and on-prem, and what we've done to transform data centers. I feel like we're going to do the same exact thing as a part of employee experience and as a part of security moving forward.
Yeah, I did remember my question, right? So I had that moment where I couldn't remember what it was, but the thing Sanjay was on, again, this leadership call this morning or yesterday, I don't know which day he was on, but he talked about the fact that when we were analyzing which company to purchase in the desktop space, we looked at, I forget the other one he cut, but he said the reason we purchased AirWatch was they were a SaaS service, right? And then there is an innovation approach of, if you're going to innovate, what you do is you use your brain to think of innovative ideas that will free up resources that provide value, right? And that AirWatch, because they were in the cloud, were allowing their people to innovate faster because they weren't spending time with customers, installing, setting up, configuring. It freed the customers to innovate. It freed us to innovate. And so you can see that this notion of doing a SaaS service and moving people to the cloud, there's plenty of stuff to innovate on, right? Like you have AI, you have all kinds of hard software problems to deal with. That if you can move the management, that's what he was talking about, is this notion that moving into a SaaS service, this kind of workload frees you up to do some of the harder, more challenging technical problems that software can solve for. So it was just interesting to hear his perspective on that AirWatch purchase and the SaaS movement, right? Which is just fascinating.
It is. I fully agree with that. I think there's, you hear about in the Bay Area all these startups all the time, born in the cloud, true SaaS service. And I think VMware, as we move more and more towards becoming an even bigger SaaS company, we need those pieces as well. So I think the AirWatch acquisition was huge for us. It transformed our culture. We iterated faster. And I think as we move Horizon even more into that SaaS culture and SaaS world, it's nothing but goodness. It's goodness for our customers because they'll be getting features a lot faster. It's great from a VMware standpoint because we'll be moving to SaaS faster, and it's great for partners as well. They'll be able to take advantage of the innovation that we're putting into our product. So I think it's nothing but a win for all parties involved.
It was a true value capture proposition, right? That they were getting at, and that's how innovative companies survive, is by innovating fast enough that you can capture that value and let other people innovate even faster. And then that a speaker today talked about the fact that industries that don't do that, manufacturing industries or industries, the big industrial industries that didn't get into an innovative cycle, actually flatlined, right? And that you want to be innovating. So it was a fascinating conversation. Okay, well, we're coming up to 54, 55, 56 minutes. I guess we'll say, do you have any specific goals that the community can help you with? And then my final question, which is kind of a hard question for you, and I did ask this in the chat to our executive teams, which is, if we're moving into SaaS services and all the SaaS software, how do we enable home labbers, right? Guys that have home labs that have been learning this technology, like, now a SaaS service comes along and all of a sudden it's going to cost them, $500 a month to go play with this and learn this, right? And it's one of the challenges that I don't think anybody has an answer. So I don't expect you to have an answer for it either. But I'll say, because you're here, because maybe you'll go back and talk to some people and we'll spread it around over time, which is, how do we take home labbers, right, and give them access to some of these SaaS services so that they can become expert at it, they can be blogging about it, and they can get adoption? Because as you know, just because you sell something in the SaaS cloud world doesn't mean that you actually make money on it. They actually have to use it, right, in order to really turn it into revenue.
That's a fantastic question, and one that we've been thinking about for a while. I think from the Horizon point of view, it's a little bit more related to capacity, because VMware doesn't sell capacity from a Horizon standpoint. It's all, do you want Azure capacity? Do you want Google capacity? Do you want VMware Cloud on AWS capacity? So I don't think we've been able to figure that part out on where we can make that price point low enough so that folks can use the cloud for their home lab. So we're thinking about things. I think we need to go back to the drawing table and see, hey, is this something that we could potentially partner with to add incentives, to add some sort of promos in place so that these can truly help out our field folks and all of the V experts, for example, so they can take advantage of it.
Right. I think that this is a job for William Lamb, right? Or a combination of it, which is, we set up a wall of Raspberry Pis or wall of some servers, and then we build a clone service, right? And we call it our clone cloud, right? And then everybody can have a segment in the clone cloud and to go learn this stuff and use it. And it's not really, we don't have to pay Amazon or Azure for the cloud resources to let the experts to experience the connectivity and security issues that you're going to have when you start using Horizon as a SaaS service, right? Because
there you go.
One of these challenges. I get that we have to pay for these resources, right?
I think we found another $1 billion company if we could develop this. So maybe I'll go back to the table and try to do that.
It's kind of like hands-on lab, but it's hands-on cloud, right? You have a little cloud snippet with your favorite, like Steam does for PCs, where all the games are just in the, and you just connect to it and you pay $5 and you get your old game. We should just have that, a big Steam wall that has all of VMware's cloud services implemented out there that can, you can go get for $5 and use it, for some amount of time, for a year or so. There you go. That's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna let Matt do that because I know he's bored. He doesn't have anything else to do.
I should be able to knock that out in about a week.
Oh, no problem. Especially if you got snow days, right? What else are you gonna do, right?
Sure. Why not?
All right. Well, we're at the top of the hour. It's been fun talking to Sachin Sharma. There you go. Can't even do it. Sachin Sharma. There you go. It's something having those words together that make that one a hard one for me. Maybe I'm just dyslexic. I don't know. Matt, last words.
Where are we at right now that you feel, Sachin, that we're shortcoming in the EUC space? Where could we be doing? I asked Gabe Muth the same question back in the fall, and he had commented some things on image management. And look how quick that we've been able to put some things out there, even in just 6 months. But where we stand right now, where do we? Not that it's not a great product, but where could it be better?
I think we can always innovate around cost management. For example, I'll give you one example with Horizon Cloud on Azure. And it's not just picking on Azure, but any cloud service, you got to really be diligent in the way that you spend money on a monthly basis for capacity.
Ingress, sure.
There you go. Yeah. If we're able to help IT control those costs by putting in some sort of optimization or some sort of tracker, and we have built this in for power management, that's a big win. So where else can we do this as a part of optimizing costs? I think that's kind of our next frontier, if you will, for the next round or the next phase of management services that come up. That I think will be a big win for customers if we're able to help with that. And I think, again, we have some pieces, not necessarily with an RBU. We have Cloud Health, for example. Maybe that's something that we can integrate into.
You could certainly see where it would be some type of analytics to know out of a Cloud Health management single pane of glass, to use an overused term, but that you could shift these workloads around monthly or even weekly, depending on where your capacity would be, based on cost analysis that would be able to drive metrics from previous usage. Absolutely.
Exactly.
All right. With that, Sachin Sharma. There you go. Finally got it. Minutes later. Thanks for being here. It's fun to listen. You got a lot of passion, a lot of excitement. I can see that. So thanks for showing up and chatting with us about it.
Great. Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
Before we go, next week, we're going to be talking about cloud and modern apps with Mike Hume. So Mike Hume's going to come back. If you've listened to the show for very long, you know Mike comes every once in a while and talks about the cloud business. So they're going to be doing a launch. There's going to be a cloud modern apps event. It's going to be a live stream again, and he's going to come tell us about it and what they're up to. The registration page will go live next week on Wednesday. So we're going to have Mike come in next week and talk about what they're up to. From a VBarbecue perspective, VBarbecue, we lost Tony Foster because TalkShoe died, so we don't have our Tony Foster thing. And did I do some VBarbecuing? We did some chicken on a gas grill. Nothing special there, right? So I've been trying to eat chicken and broccoli. The beginning of the year, eat healthier, don't kill myself. So that's it. No VBarbecue this week either. So with that, we'll be back here again next week with Mike Hume, Cloud and Modern Apps event. Until then, everybody stay healthy and stay warm, and do not burn too much of your furniture if you're down in Texas, because you're going to need it for next week. Thanks a lot. See you again next week.